Dear students, hello and namaskar. Myself SP Singh from Kendriya Vidyalaya Sangathan. This session is for class 12th biology students based on chapter Human Reproduction. This is the third session in the series of 4 sessions and our focus will be on menstrual cycle. The learning objectives. After this session, the students will be able to define the term menstrual cycle, draw the diagram of different phases of menstrual cycle, describe different phases and explain the functions of the hormones involved in it, and finally identify the more fertile and the less fertile phases of the menstrual cycle. So, menstrual cycle in the human females, the important point to remember here is that the reproductive cycle in female primates like monkeys, apes and human beings is called as menstrual cycle. Its onset is at the puberty called as menarche. The cycle of the event starting from one menstrual cycle to the next, it's called as menstrual cycle. It is essential for the production of oocyte. It is essential for the production of oocyte as we can see here, and also for the preparation of uterus for pregnancy. This cycle is repeated every 28 to 35 days and normally one egg is released per cycle. Now let us go to the diagrammatic representation of menstrual cycle. Let's now go on to phases of menstrual cycle. And the first phase being proliferative phase, let's see the changes in the uterine endometrium. We must first understand the word menstruation, also called as period or monthly. These corresponds to the changes in the uterine mucosa. Since the human female can feel, see or experience these changes, which generally appear as something very unusual, and if anybody is experiencing for the first time at the onset of puberty, it may become a cause of fear or psychosocial changes, or of course, over the time everything normalizes. Understanding of menstrual cycle is essential not only for biology students but for all, as it forms a part of life. Let us now see how these changes occurs. In the first 2 to 4 days of the menstrual cycle, there is breaking of the inner lining, It results into oozing of blood, as the blood vessels are also broken. Let us see how this occurs. In the first 2 to 4 days of the menstrual cycle, there is breaking in the inner layer of the endometrium. Breaking of endometrium also breaks the blood vessels in it, resulting in oozing of blood. Menstrual flow is the removal of broken tissue and lining of the blood from the vagina that continues for 2 to 4 days. This is known as period or monthly, as it is periodic in occurrence, that is repeated every month. The occurrence of the menstrual cycle indicates that ovum released during the mid of the previous cycle was not fertilized. Absence of menstrual cycle may indicate two things. Either pregnancy has been established or the female is undergoing some psychological stress or physical stress like sickness, poor diet or trauma. Changes in the uterine endometrium, proliferative stage, we take it now here. Important to note here is that after menstruation, endometrium repairs itself. Endometrium thickness slightly increases till 10th of day. As it approaches the mid of the cycle, the regeneration is visible. This is under the influence of estrogen. Now, rapid increase in the endometrium is seen in the second phase of the menstrual cycle, that is also called as luteal or secretory phase. This is under the influence of progesterone. Let's go to the ovarian follicles. Let us see what happens in the ovary during this time. It involves the proliferation of the primary follicle. to form the mature follicle. This is under the influence of follicle stimulating hormone, that is from pituitary. The follicular cells that you can see here, they release estrogen that maintains the reproductive canal. Increase in the number of the follicular cells results into increase in the concentration of estrogen. It results into regeneration of the endometrial wall that we saw in the previous slide. In the middle of the cycle, nearly 12 to 14 days, the amount of LH increases rapidly. This is called as LH surge. This leads to rupturing of the Graafian follicle, and the process is called as ovulation. This makes the end of first phase of the menstrual cycle. We move on to now the second phase of the menstrual cycle. What happens inside the ovary? The empty Graafian follicle that you see here, now called as corpus luteum, it now secretes hormone called as progesterone. Remember that this progesterone maintains the endometrium. It makes it thick, more nutritive, and ready for implantation and pregnancy. During pregnancy, all the events that we saw in our previous slide regarding the uterus, they stop. That is, menstruation stops, proliferation of oocyte stops. In the absence of pregnancy, this corpus luteum degenerates, resulting into decrease in the level of progesterone. You can see here progesterone is decreasing. When the luteum is bigger in size, progesterone is high. When the corpus luteum is decreasing, progesterone is low. This leads to breaking of the endometrium. We call it as menstruation. This marks the end of the previous cycle. That means the start of the new cycle. Let's go to the hormones involved in it now. The first hormone that you can see is FSH. It is marked as red here. FSH is follicle stimulating hormone. It is secreted by the anterior pituitary and it stimulates proliferation of the new follicle. The next hormone is luteinizing hormone. It is secreted again from the anterior pituitary. It stimulates the mature follicle, resulting into ovulation. Let's now see the hormones involved in the menstrual cycle. The first is FSH or follicle stimulating hormone. It is secreted by anterior pituitary and it results into proliferation of the new follicles here that we can see, FSH as red. The second hormone is luteinizing hormone secreted from anterior pituitary. It stimulates mature follicle, resulting into ovulation. The third hormone is estrogen. It is secreted by the follicular cells. It maintains female cycle and the feminine characters. The next hormone is progesterone. It is secreted by corpus luteum and it stimulates endometrium to be more receptive for implantation. Let's now see the schematic diagram of the menstrual cycle. In this particular diagram, you see three sections: happenings in the brain, pituitary, happenings in the ovary, and happenings in the endometrium, that is the uterus, all three together. When we see this particular diagram, we see that there is a hormone called FSH at the starting. It is this hormone which results into development of follicle in the ovary. It is this same stage when the previous wall, the endometrium wall, it is being cut here. This wall is being cut here. So one thing comes very clear here: the day 1 of the menstrual cycle is the day when the menstruation starts, because the previous uterine thickenings must be removed so that the new thickenings, the new cycle must start. This corresponds to the development of the new follicle, and all this is occurring because of FSH. Again, focus, in the middle of the cycle there is another hormone called LH. It surge here, increased concentration. This results into release of ovum from the Graafian follicle. Again, see one more thing. As the follicle is increasing in size, the number of follicular cells are increasing, the level of estrogen is increasing. So, estrogen being secreted by the follicular cells. So, how the changes are corresponding together in the body, this thing is not visible to us, only this thing is visible to us. Even this is not visible to the person who is experiencing. The person who is experiencing is only this much. Any information that goes wrong here affects the whole life also. So, understanding this menstrual cycle is very essential for everybody. So, after this, let's recapitulate what we have done and test ourselves. The first thing is define menstrual cycle, differentiate menstrual cycle and menstruation, two terms. Third, explain the different phases of menstrual cycle, compare the functions of different hormones involved in this cycle, what can happen if the level of progesterone or estrogen drops down. So, dear students, in this third session of the human reproductive system, we have focused on female reproductive cycle, that is menstrual cycle. So, dear students, in this third session of the human reproductive system, we have focused on female reproductive cycle, that is menstrual cycle. I hope you have all enjoyed this session. I also hope that you have understood every aspect of this topic covered. We will meet again in the fourth and the last session of the series on human reproduction system and focus on fertilization and pregnancy. Thank you very much.